Hello folks, Alistair here. Just a heads up, our short story this week is fantastic and deals directly with grief, as does my host spot. If you're not in a position where you want to hear that, we understand completely. I am often not there myself this year, so please, if you have to, skip the story, jump straight to the parade or one of our other episodes, and we'll see you next time. And if you are in a position where you can listen to it, you're in for a treat. This is a lovely story. PseudoPod, episode 946, October 31st, 2024. This week's stories, Toby by Brittany Graves, and the 2024 Halloween Parade by Alistair Stewart. Hosted by Alistair Stewart, with audio by Chelsea Davis. Happy Halloween, everyone. Welcome to our favourite time of the year and to our usual festive double bill. Join us after the episode for this year's Halloween Parade, but first, this week's story comes to us from Brittany Graves. Brittany is an occupational health registered nurse and part-time aspiring writer when the mood strikes. She lives in Texas with her two unruly children, a devastatingly handsome husband, and a dog that adores them all, as it should. Recently, her works have been published in Dark Matter magazine and Lovecraftiana, both of which feature stories from her favourite genres, horror and science fiction. Your narrator this week is Siobhan Gallican. Siobhan, a voice artist and premier William Hartnell voice actor, is one of those people who actually loves Marmite, and I've got to say, I'm coming around to it. Listen to Siobhan's podcast at The Flashing Blade, or watch the show on YouTube. So, get ready for tricks and treats, because we have stories for you, and you know, deep down, they're true.
Toby by Brittany Graves. It's a long walk from Founders Cemetery, but I'm old, dying. I don't mind the wait. The trick-or-treaters are out already, unusually boisterous this year, yet I barely hear them. I sit on my back porch in my creaky rocking chair, waiting and watching the empty, grassy borders of my property. Any moment now, I feel it. Beside me, the jack-o'-lantern's flickering flames dance upon the grass like a picture show, and I gaze at the photograph in my wrinkled hand. Olan Mills, October the 31st, 1953. Toby the Laughing Clown, 6 years. The last picture ever taken of my son, well before my neighbour, Mr. Keeley, drove blackout drunk on a night known for streets filled with roaming children. I choke back decades of tears. I try to remember my boy, how he was that morning, how excited he was to go to the portrait studio, how he pranced around and played peekaboo with his ruffled pointy hat. Oh, what a goofy gap-toothed grin he had. A plague of grackles descend from the sky with raspy squawks, dusk on their winds, and settle in the dead trees that border the cornfields. The sun finally falls below the horizon, its fading rays lost to sudden, ominous darkness. Halloween night has come. The grackles cease their jagged cries and perch upon the branches, deathly still. My hair stands on end, and I've got goosebumps all over, even after all these Halloweens. A breeze kicks up, and with it the sweet, cloying scent of decay. I spy a dark shape at the edge of the property, hear the rustle of stilted movement through sun-dried cornstalks. He is here. I stand, knees popping, and with a frail, quivering hand I beckon, hopefully for the last time. I'm old, dying, and now I'm tired of waiting. He shuffles across the lawn, dingy clown mask askew on his mottled, peeling brow. Clumps of soil and patches of limp blonde hair bunch about the straps hanging around his ears. The stained clown costume, its shiny sheen and once bright buttons, rots on his shriveled frame. I grasp his cold hand with a forced smile and hand him his faded candy bucket. A pumpkin bought at the A&P. It's plastic grown, brittle and cracked with time. Toby, I say, though I know he cannot hear me. Don't forget to say trick or treat.
We bring our ghosts with us. I found 3 species so far. The first is the loudest, the intrusive voices from long-dead arguments and hurts that demand to be relitigated and delight in costing you processing cycles and sleep by working out where you went wrong. Not what to do about it, not how to move on, just the mistakes, endlessly. I've met those many, many times. They are tinnitus, it sometimes seems, screaming in our ears but only audible when we focus in, or worse, when focus is just what we lack. The second species is related to them. It whispers about the awful things that could be coming, the possibilities of tragedy connected to that first species by a chain of false, inverted, curdled causality. If we can just remember what went wrong last time, if we can just brace for impact next time, then we can win and emerge perfect and unscathed, and nothing bad will ever happen, aside from the exhaustion. Aside from the headaches. Aside from what you miss by thinking about the worst case scenario. Aside from the joy you lose as you let your worst thoughts turn the volume up on your other worst thoughts. The third species is the hardest, because while those first 2 deal with the intangible siren call of what we should have done and what we might have to do, the third deals with what has happened and what to do next. These are the actual ghosts. People we've lost, places we can no longer go, jobs we no longer have and wish we did. The weeks immediately before and after my mother's death earlier this year were horrifying. But once we'd had the funeral, I found myself calm, happy, light-hearted. Some of that was the rubber band correction of the 6 grueling weeks of hospice care. Some of it was just happiness. A piece of music played at her funeral surfaced in the most delightfully incongruous way a few days later. I saw her at the Worldcon Hugo reception, a small, neat woman with close-cut grey hair, smiling and bobbing her shoulders just like Mum always did. And I wasn't shocked or startled. I also wasn't disappointed when I saw her again a few minutes later talking to someone else and saw it wasn't her. I knew it wasn't her. But it felt nice. It felt reassuring. And odd. That lack of sadness, that gap where what I've been told grief should be, that got me worried, and I began to sincerely, genuinely worry I was somehow doing it wrong. So much so that I asked my therapist about it, and the answer I got was intensely comforting and unusually unequivocal, and it was this: there is no way to grieve wrong. I loved my mum. She loved me. So much of my sense of humour and so much of my ethical framework and my fondness for toast all come from her, and when she died, there was no unfinished business. There was no sense of things unresolved, and that's a blessing I've become more grateful for as it's come more into focus over the last few weeks and months. And because of that blessing, and because of that experience, I can't and won't judge the protagonist here. Because there is no way to grieve wrong. Some people need to keep the wound open, need to keep feeling the pain so they can function. Like a great joke you hear 6 times, you'll laugh a little less every time, but the warm, calm spread of your emotional response will never leave you. That grief loses its capital letter. To use my favourite quote, eventually it becomes the second thing you think about when you wake up. You sit with your grief because you never stop loving the people you've lost or the life you're no longer part of, but you just sit with them. And as the days continue, that's a comfort I choose to believe the protagonist here embraces, and it is implied in this beautiful, gentle, teeth-out text that that's a choice. Their little boy, always their little boy. Not grieving wrong. Just grieving. We bring our ghosts with us, because that way they're never quite gone. It's the hardest kind of ghost. And it's the kindest too. Immense thanks to Brittany for this superb story, and to Siobhan for the fantastic reading, and to Chelsea for the typically excellent audio production. Thank you all. For years, the Halloween parade has travelled through the centre of town. It's been the same route every time, the comfort of routine playing the bass note for the parade's complex symphony of unease. It's the tune you all hum. It's the routine you all have. You grab a churro, you grab a seat, you don't look too hard at the people around you as you have a lovely time, and then leave. Except this year the parade starts at the docks. You arrive early, newness and uncertainty building the cortisol wave. You ride through town and towards the water, and it's nice. Actually, you've never been to the docks before, but there's the comforting plink and creak of boat riggings in the wind, a really good fish and chip shop or two, and hey, the churro guy, because horror may be eternal, but so are snacks. You walk down a line of beached boats, the Orca, the Antonia Grazia, the Sacramentum. Someone has called their boat the Nostromo. Seriously, and you're still chuckling about it when there's the whoosh of a fire arrow and the crump of ignition, and a Viking longship begins to burn over on the docks. It looks like someone has murdered a wooden dragon. Massive curved hull, full sails and dragon heads at bow and stern. The boat's shape is defined against the night sky by its destruction. It is being written into certain abstraction as you watch. It is horrifying. It is beautiful. The controller, silhouetted against the burning boat, their precise forms shifting and towering as the flames rise. Fire. This year we start with fire. All it destroys. All it enables. She walks forward and past the crowd. Behind her the longship slides into the water. In perfect synchronization as the boat hits the ocean, a colossal winged shape flies directly towards you. The crowd gasps and screams. The immense bird caws once in return and then banks away down the road. You notice it does so directly above the controller, keeping middle distance between her and the intense, worried young woman who follows it. She's dressed in light armor. She's riding a chariot. Her eyes never leave the bird's shadow. There are other shapes coming out of the smoke of the burning boat. Colossal bipedal forms that move through the ocean with ease. A horde of blinking eyes, a second, larger winged creature. Not a bird this time. No, something vast. Something old. And just at the start of a flock, and you're distantly aware you can't quite look away from it or want to, as it hurtles towards you, and in retrospect, the robot is unexpected. The robot with motorbike wheels, driven by an extremely small, impossibly old man, aided by a crew of young assistants whose every move speaks to their competency, their terror, and their exhaustion. The robot is janky, rickety, held together by the unshakable determination and burning talent of its creators. You can't for the life of you take it seriously, and that's the point. And you're glad for it. And you aren't alone. A man, longer hair, beard with more grey than the last time you saw him, walks behind the robot in the unconscious rearguard position that anyone who has ever worked in a protective or emergency service falls into. He looks so tired, and as you look, you realize he has a prosthetic arm. As he goes past, you follow his gaze to the woman with the katana, both in the same ill-fitting uniform. He is ragged, exhausted. She is furious. Focused. They are either going to tear each other apart or tear everything between them apart. But until then, they're finding solace in each other's presence, even at distance. Especially at distance. The car that follows them is what someone would call old, but you would call classic. It is a 70s sedan, not quite an Oldsmobile, but the sort of long, wide vehicle that could cover America in 10 bonnet lengths or so. It looks like it has, too, caked in dust and with the roof covered in supplies. A tent, clothes, a water purifier, and you notice a radio dish. The woman in the driver's seat is talking into a radio, and there is something a little off about her. She looks worried, haunted, constantly casting around, seeing the crowds, seeing the other members of the parade, but not seeing them. Almost like she's alone. Following her is Sir and Apprentice. You know Sir. Sir is every authority figure in your life, distilled into one tall, thin, precise, broad, powerful, shabby, furious, amiable form. He is the idea of superiority, and Apprentice is the idea of the student. Enthusiastic, slovenly, darting, plodding. The pair of them forming and reforming in response to each audience member's gaze and memories. The constant they rotate is their trolley of artifacts. Well, that and their voices. But you become distracted by the search party cutting through the fog. Is it fog? Is it smoke from the fire? When did it get so cold? These trained rescue professionals, rangers in high-vis gear, walking with the offhand confidence of people who work outside for a living. But one of them, though, the fog seems densest around her, and as you look, you see figures moving through it, around her, whispering to her. You hope she finds who she's looking for. You hope she finds them before she starts listening to the whispers. Excuse me. There is a punk standing next to you, crouching, actually, and punk not in a pejorative sense either. This person has the determinedly cheerful demeanor of counterculture, and they smell amazing, actually. They have a satchel full of greens and dirt under their fingernails, and you are instantly reassured, not just by them, but by the fact they trusted you enough to speak, because they have the same caution you do, have had for years now, under the charm. Oh, I'm sorry, you start. They point to your leg, to the plant under it. Wild garlic. Need it for lasagna. Oh, that's cool. You help them dig it out and they nod in thanks. Come by. It's going to be delicious. You are still smiling at the thought of tasting wild garlic when you spot a commotion on the other side of the audience. A young woman, a scarf partially covering her face, stands up suddenly and stumbles down into the parade. There's some minor commotion, but just as this looks like it's going to cause a disruption, the controller touches her arm and guides her into place. The young woman walks slowly down the road, eyes down, trying not to attract attention, doing so anyway. Behind her, a young man in an immaculate suit that he has clearly slept in, and a painfully thin woman with a cat on a leash walk down the road the same way someone walks into a storm. Terrified, eyes darting, heads on swivels, they are looking for something and they are wincing at every sound, but for now, at least, they are safe. The young miners are not as lucky. 2 of them are badly injured, 4 more bear ligature marks around their necks, and they are all panicking, all frantically looking around them, aside from one. He's just as aware as his colleagues, and somehow you sense these are his colleagues, not his friends. Just as worried, but he moves with the same calm as the sea behind the parade. He is not going to stop. Not until he needs to. Until he chooses to. Until he has to. You watch him lock eyes with one of the other miners, and something passes between them. He looks so sad. The young woman that resembles him at his side looks so guilty. They keep running. The 2 dads, deep in conversation, that walk behind the miners in their faded corporate sweatshirts, seem off. One is scanning the crowd in the way that's familiar to you, looking for threats, looking for his children. The other is talking animatedly, charmingly. He is engaged. He's lovely, actually, friendly and reassuring and right there, and he wants you to see no one and nothing but how engaged and friendly and right there he is. One of these men is exhausted. One of these men is furious. Both of them are dangerous. An older woman in a full, outbreak-style yellow biohazard suit with a gun in one hand walks by next, and it is a stark image. The coy nature of so many threats here at the parade, replaced by the brutal truth of mortality and infection and death. The controller appears again, alone this time, walks with her arm in arm, smiling and waving like a pageant queen. The weather shifts again. Thunderclouds start to roll in a way that really should only happen in movies, and you look up, rebelling against the atmospheric pressure, squeezing your temples, and see, just for a second, you see a colossal, oblong shape hovering in the sky. To your left, someone laughs. To your right, someone sobs. They sound exactly the same. Lightning flashes, your vision fills with white, and water. This year, we end with water. All it feeds, all it contains, all we know and all we choose not to know. The controller, smiling and walking in the center of the parade route, her arms wide as she chuckles like an indulgent tyrant. A wise man once described the ocean as largely containing fish, trash, and horrible mystery. I choose to view it as the home of potential. And this year, we embrace that potential. A boat, a trawler with the dimensions of a plucky animated protagonist, is wheeled across the parade route in the opposite direction. A man stands at the helm, and he does not look away from the choppy dark water ahead, and you are not sure he can, and even less sure he wants to. The controller applauds as the boat nears the slipway and encourages us to stand and do the same. The captain doesn't move, doesn't look anywhere but where he's going, out into the storm, out into the fog. The boat crests the slipway, slides down, and a ragged cheer sends it on its way. Lightning strikes the horizon, an iceberg. Lightning strikes again, an oil rig, a third time, and there is a moment, just a moment, where you see motion under the surface. Then the ocean rises, and the fog descends, and the boat has gone, and the parade is over, accompanied by the distant rumbles of thunder. The controller bows, accepts the applause her presence demands, and then walks toward the slipway. You choose, as you always do, not to watch her leave. Instead, you seek for the punk in the crowd and spot them at the center of a tight knot of people. Some pick up trash left behind by other parade goers. Others sift through the detritus and the docks for something useful, making something new out of what was left behind. It's dinner time, and your new friends are making lasagna. Happy Halloween, everybody. See you next year. On to the subject of subscribing and support. PseudoPod is funded by you, our listeners, and we are formally now, bow tie and everything, a non-profit. One-time donations are gratefully received and much appreciated, but what really makes a difference is subscribing. And a $5 monthly Patreon donation gives us more than just money. It gives us stability, reliability, dependability, and you want us with lots of ability words and a very well-maintained tower, because we've seen what's in the basement. You don't want that getting out. So if you can, please go to pseudopod.org and sign up by clicking on Feed the Pod. If you have any questions about how to support EA and ways to give, especially if you have ideas to give that we haven't thought of yet, please reach out to us at donations@escapeartists.net. If you can't afford to support us financially, we understand completely. Times are hard, and they have been hard for a long time. Then please consider leaving reviews of our episodes, or generally talking about us on whichever form of social media you are obsessively doom-scrolling this week. We can especially recommend Blue Sky. It's actually pretty lovely. We now have a Blue Sky account, and we would love to see you over there. Find us at pseudopod.org. If you like merch, you can also support us by buying hoodies, t-shirts, and other bits and pieces from the Escape Artists Void merch store. The link is in various places, including our pinned tweet. PseudoPod is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Download and listen to the episode on any device you like, but don't change it or sell it. Theme music is by permission of Anders Manga. Next, we will have Will They Disappear For You by Cynthia Gomez, with narration by the wonderful Julia Rios, hosting by the wonderful Eleanor R. Wood, and audio production by the wonderful Chelsea. We'll see you then. And finally, PseudoPod wants you to remember this from Andrew Garfield and Elmo. It's a kind of lovely thing to feel in a way, because it means you really loved somebody when you miss them. Be kind to yourself, folks. You are, I promise, worth it. Stay safe, have fun, have a great Halloween.
An arm appeared from nowhere on the shape, seemingly projected like the PseudoPod of a protozoan.
It's a pseudopod. It's a big foot.
It's all about podcasts these days.